Hi, I'm Chris Morrissey. Today we're looking at duty ethics. Duty ethics is the second moral theory that we're considering in our ethics course. But let's back up a minute. If we're talking about good and evil, how do we know what's good? Well, there are different kinds of good. There are some things that are irreducibly good. That is, they're always good. They're not good for getting something else. They're good in and of themselves. If we have them, we recognize that they're always good. So, call those goods the first principles of moral reasoning. We learned last time about virtue ethics. Whether you call it virtue ethics or living according to nature, natural law, virtue ethics, living according to nature, says we seek what's good. Seeking what's good is natural. The foundation for moral reasoning will then be the basic goods that all humans aim at in their action. One good list comes from John Finnis, who in his book Natural Law and Natural Rights lists 7 basic goods. We can discuss those further together in class. But let's turn now to consider duty ethics. Let's turn now to talk about rights and duties. What's a right? Well, we can define a right as a claim or title to certain things and actions against other people. So if I have a right to this parking spot because I paid for my parking space, well, then you have a duty not to park in my parking spot. In other words, every right imposes a duty on everyone else to respect it. So if I have a right to this reserved parking spot, then it's your duty to stay out of the spot, otherwise you'll get towed. And that's the thing about rights and duties. Every right has a corresponding duty. So for example, you have a right to be free from bodily harm if you're going for a walk in the park at night. Because that's your right, it's everyone's duty to respect your right. Now here's the thing. While every right has a corresponding duty, not every duty has a corresponding right. For example, if a needy person comes up to you in the street and asks you for some money, they don't have a right to the money in your wallet. But you do have a duty of charity. That is, you do have a duty to help other people, and that's called charity. So it's not justice, it's charity that's involved there. I mean, justice involves things like private property, so that if it's your money, well, you have a right to the money in your wallet, and everyone else has a duty not to rob you and to steal your wallet. Justice has to do with corresponding duties, but charity is a duty with no corresponding right. So we can define justice as the virtue that respects the rights of other people. In other words, justice isn't an arrangement of external affairs, like you not parking in my reserved parking spot, you not stealing my wallet, and vice versa. It's not an arrangement of external things, it's an internal condition. Are we habitually disposed to respect the rights of other people? So we say that justice is a virtue by which we're inclined to accord respect to the rights of other people. But justice is not the only virtue. If justice was the only virtue, well, then moral action would just be a matter of respecting rights. But not every duty has a corresponding right. As we saw before, not every duty is founded in a right. That is the case with justice, but it's not the case with charity. Think about it this way. Charity leaves you free to figure out how you're going to do good for other people. It makes life more difficult, it makes virtue more difficult, but it also grants you the opportunity for creativity. That is, you have freedom, so you're free to use your creativity to figure out how to fulfill your duty of charity, your duty of love of neighbor. So if we ask what basic ethical principles are, okay, we've got a list of basic goods. We listed 7 at the beginning of the video. What are basic ethical principles? What would the most fundamental ethical principle be? You might say, do good, avoid evil. Okay, we need a little more detail than that. I mean, the list of 7 makes it obvious you want these basic goods. If we're looking for basic ethical principle, I submit that these can be thought of as good candidates. There's the teaching of St. Paul, who says that evil may not be done for the sake of good. Or said a little bit differently, there's the teaching of Socrates, who says it's better to suffer wrong than to do wrong. This relates to the idea of duty ethics. Duty ethics insists you should always, ever, only do good. Never do wrong. If someone else wants to do wrong, okay, you can endure it. But you yourself should never do wrong. And that's a fundamental principle. In other words, you shouldn't act directly against any of those basic human goods. So recall that life was number 1 on the list. So it's always wrong to act against the basic human good of life. For example, to harm someone else's life, take it away from them. I think Finnis's categorization of how to think about basic ethical action is a better formulation than Kant's categorical imperative. But Kant points out something important. Whatever you're doing, you're not treating other people like instruments. You're treating them as themselves basic goods, that is, possessing inherent human dignity. You're treating them as worthwhile in their own right. In other words, you're treating them always as an end and never as a means. I mean, you can use them as a means too. So if you have a friend, your friend can write a reference letter to help you get a job. But you're not treating your friend just as a means. You can also think about duty ethics this way. In our previous video, we learned about virtue ethics. Virtue ethics says that each component of action has to be good. And if just one component is bad, then the whole action is bad. Duty ethics doesn't focus on all 4. Duty ethics says all you have to worry about is the object of your action being good. So duty ethics is not incompatible with virtue ethics. Duty ethics in and of itself is fine. Do your duty. Respect the rights of others. Be virtuous. Always act so that objectively the form of your action is good. Well, that's important, but from the standpoint of virtue ethics, it's only one of 4 components. And just to remind you what the object of the moral act is, that first of the 4 considerations is, the object of the moral act says that objectively what you're doing has to be good. So apart from subjective intention, think about what's going on in the act. Like the picture on your screen. Is it surgery or is it a serial killer? Well, if head transplants aren't a legitimate medical procedure, then something is wrong. So duty ethics says that the object of your action always in and of itself has to be good.